Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to have Paula Lacobara join us today. She is a transformational coach who teaches women entrepreneurs to activate and integrate feminine principles so that they can experience more ease, fulfillment, flow, and magic in their everyday lives. She teaches women how to balance their masculine and feminine energies in life and business so they can create unlimited abundance and meaningful success on their terms. She's the creator of the Empowered Woman Archetype System, which is a roadmap she uses personally, as well as with the women she coaches to help them understand themselves better, to feel safe and empowered. She wants women to realize it is possible to be true to yourself as a woman and be successful without needing to sacrifice yourself or anything in the process. Join us as we dive deeper into her journey to getting where she is today and what you can do to get started. Paula, I'm so excited to have you back. And as usual, you always have so much information to share with us, always challenging our beliefs and how we can just really accept and receive life's abundance and really coming into our home as women. So thank you so much again for being here.
Such an honor, such an honor. Thank you for inviting me and for being part of this. This is what makes me happy. This is what gets me up in the morning, and knowing that I can share this message, and that I can, even if it's one woman who listens to this and feels like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what because I remember the time that happened for me. I listened to someone. I listened to someone. I was like, yes, this is it. And I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one. And that's my intention with being here. So thank you for allowing that to happen.
No, you're such a voice for really for a lot of us, and I think a leader in this space. So thank you for your work. So Paula, I want to jump right in because help us understand this modern day woman, our need for independence, and because I see it so often with women feeling like I can do it all, like that claiming like I need to do it all. Being afraid to ask for help, and also that sense of not knowing how to receive life's abundance. So, can you
Mm.
walk us through this real understanding of true power?
It's so confusing, right? Because and this happened for me. Like, you're a woman, and I never really understood it until I understood this.
Mm,
That within each of us, men and women, there are feminine and masculine qualities,
mm,
energies that we operate from. And I consider myself as a woman. I wear nice clothes, I put lipstick on, whatever. I identify myself as a woman, but the concepts of being a woman
mm,
weren't really that clear. And what I didn't realize is that I was operating from mostly masculine energy, which means that, so that in one hand, meaning you're go-getter, you go do it, do. It's that
mm,
doing energy, challenging yourself. I'm gonna make it work. And it's not bad, right? It's not bad. But the problem with women is that when you identify yourself as a woman, first of all, your feminine body, it's not built to be pushed in that way.
mm. Interesting.
And in the way that men push, in the way that men, they feed off that competition, they feed off that energy, that challenge. That's how they operate, and it feeds them.
Mm,
For us, it drains our energy. So it was very confusing, because when you go out there and you say, I want it all, I'm going to do it all, then we're like, end up exhausted. I talk to women every day. We are
mm,
exhausted. We don't sleep at night. We get 2, 3 hours, 4 hours of sleep. Women wake up in the middle of the night like this, stressed out with so much in their heads.
mm,
That's no way to live. And then we make it work, so we push more, we make it, we push harder, we make it work, we're going to do it. But it comes with a price.
mm,
And when I understood that if I only learned how to utilize my feminine energy, I started to replenish myself, and I actually had more space to do more with less. It's
Wow,
like
powerful.
a, you know, like that emoji that blows your mind. It's like a completely, you get
I
it,
love
right?
that. Yeah.
It's a completely, on top of that, also, what happens when we are away from our feminine energy
Mm.
is that we are in a model of scarcity and sacrifice, which is, this has been passed down from generations and generations and generations. And I'm not saying they didn't have a reason for it, you know, war,
Mm.
famine, the world as it was. Now things are shifting. There's a difference, but I learned through my own experience. I'm my first client here. My first, when I realized this, uh I I tapped into the abundance. I tapped into giving myself permission to give myself the space I need instead of grinding myself to the ground. Um, when I realized that paying attention to how I feel, I would know where to go
Mm.
intuitively, instinctually. And I started using that. I tapped into an abundance where things flow to me, they come to me. I don't have to hustle. So there's a clear example. Last year, I did a TEDx, my first TEDx, and now I got invited to do another one next month. I remember the time when I was scrolling on Instagram and I see this banner that says, you want to be featured at TEDx, or you want to be a, keynote speaker, blah, we give you the secrets, and, you have to do this and you have to do that. And I was reading, oh, this sounds really good. This is before I heard about, and I don't know why it just came to me, right? Intuitively, I felt like, oh, this will be so fun to do. Oh, but then I have to hire these people. I have to hire a PR. There's a whole process to it. This is the way, right? Like there's a whole process to it. Like you have to like build your audience, do this, do that, blah, 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 which I already have my audience. But I was like, okay, I see there's a process, and then you try to understand the process, blah. And I was like, okay. And all of a sudden, a month later, I'm not joking, one of my past clients calls me up and says, guess what? I got approved for the TEDx license and I want you to be here.
Amazing.
And I'm like, okay, thank you. So this is when I'm like, thank you, more please. Because I realized that my job was to get really clear about what I wanted. And when we really get clear about what we want, this is when things come to us. And this just didn't happen on this TEDx. I'm just giving an example. This is how I live my life. And this is how I teach women to connect with that align, to get so crystal clear and to be so aligned. But what happens is that when we're doing, and we're operating from that masculine energy, it's really hard to stop and really know what you want, because you've been doing everything for everybody else, or you've been doing everything to, so then others would see you as you see yourself. And that comes from, you have to work for it instead of you have to be it.
Mm. Wow, powerful distinction.
Very different. So we need to move from having to do to having to be.
Mm.
When
I just
you are,
go ahead.
no,
When
no,
you
no,
are?
I think we got cut off. No, when you are, you are. And you're aligned, and that alignment finds you. That's the vortex, right?
Mm.
I don't know if you heard about that term. Like you are, because you're clear, and it's from the inside out, not the outside in. But everything we learned since we were like this big comes from the outside in. That's the world as we see it. We have to do, so then we, there's always that reasoning behind it. I can't just receive. Oh no, I have to work for it. I have to do
Mm.
something about it. I can't just receive. Who am I? Who do you think you are? Well, what do you mean? Who do you think
Wow.
you are? So it's getting to the point of owning that for yourself. That's when
That's,
the magic happens.
I was gonna say that's actually really interesting you bring that up, because it's true that we always have to we have to feel like we're somebody, or we have to be something or be doing something in order to claim some, not to claim, but like to feel like it's gonna come, or like, and you know what,
Worthy,
sorry,
worthy.
yeah,
Yeah,
worthy,
to be
exactly.
worthy.
Yeah. And that's at
Yeah.
the root of it, feeling like we're enough. And so, actually, with that, I wanted to ask you, this brings up another question, because for a lot of people that may be familiar with this or not, how is this, first of all, related to, because a lot of people are like, yeah, but thinking about it isn't actually going to make it real. So, I just want to create the distinction between like opening up to receive versus like wishful thinking.
Yes.
And I want to, so I was hoping you could clarify that. And then just to also how that, how we sabotage ourselves on that way as well. So like just a little bit of that distinction, because I know a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion there with what you mentioned.
Yeah. So the way to call in and to attract things that you want for yourself, yeah, it's not about just thinking about it and waiting, sitting in the couch. That is not receiving. That's passiveness. Receiving is a very active state. And it requires, again, that we know what we want, to have crystal clear clarity. It's not, I want a red car just because. No, I like, it feels, does it feel true to you, or do you want it because you think you need to have it?
Mm.
It's a
Mm.
huge distinction. And that's the same that happens with success, which we might talk about that later. But um, what's true to you? What is true to you will come to you. And when you create, when, first of all, when you have the clarity, and then you create, I keep doing this, right? Because to me this is alignment. When you create, when you align to it, and you create, there's steps. You have to create an action. It's like in tango, there's the feminine and masculine. You got to dance the tango. You have to create an action and then allow yourself to receive. But if we're overstepping because we're taking so many actions, but we don't allow the space to receive, we're never going to have that flow. And a lot of us, we're operating from the neck up. This is women, instead of utilizing the 72,000 receptors that we have in our body alone. So we're using our mind to just like go, 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 do. And we don't allow, there's no space for us to be in that receptive, because receiving doesn't feel safe. Receiving is selfish or greedy. Receiving is not for me. I have to sacrifice. There's not enough for everybody. So who am I to receive? All of that is what needs to be checked. This is, I have a whole program created for this. Believe it or not, it's not as simple as we think. And for women in particularly, receiving is not safe.
Mm.
A lot of us has said yes to things, because also this is what we learned. We said yes when we meant no.
Mm.
And there were high consequences for that. So receiving doesn't feel safe. We say, the modern woman says, well, I don't care, I'll do it myself. I don't need anybody.
Yeah.
Not true. I don't need anybody. I got it. And we become the I got it woman, but inside, any I got it woman, because I was one. I often fell into, well, what about me? I wouldn't tell anyone, because that was a sign of weakness. I couldn't allow, I had to be strong. I couldn't allow myself to show that. But I knew when I was at night by my pillow, I'm like, well, what about me? What's wrong with me? Something must be wrong with me. Why am I not receiving? And I didn't know I was blocking it with this image.
Wow.
I was portraying. People are like, I didn't think you need anything. I have this in my program, The Power of Receiving. People who have difficulty receiving attract people who have difficulty giving.
Mm. Wow. Mm.
Sit with that for a moment and really feel that. People who have difficulty giving attract people who have difficulty receiving. I'm sorry, people who have difficulty receiving attract people who have
Mm.
difficulty giving. When I read that quote, I was like, it just made
Mm.
all the sense in my life. I was like, huh,
It's like all
no,
the pieces fell into place.
like a domino. I'm like, wow.
That was
Yes.
powerful. I do feel that. I feel like there's that, and it's interesting because that is so today's world in many ways. And it's interesting because, like we say, it's an evolution. So there's a spectrum to cover here. But anyway, I know we could talk about this for so long. So the purpose of today, I really want to focus on your story, and I know we'll be diving back into a lot of these concepts in and out. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, keep me
So,
on track because you know me. I start talking and forget about
oh
it.
my God, and I could just keep going with you. So, I now that we've had kind of like a teaser into really what it is that you feel so passionate about, and I think your energy speaks volumes, why don't we start with understanding what is your why? Like Simon Sinek always says, start with the why. So why do you do what you do? Like, where do you find the passion for, what's your why?
Well, my why is my own evidence of my life and how my life transformed since I started doing this work myself.
Mm,
And I'm like, why there's not enough of these teachings? Why are women not really knowing this? And I didn't know it. So I was searching. I was going for it. I was looking everywhere. I'm so curious by nature. I mean, ever since I was a little girl, my nose was always everywhere. I needed to know everything. So curious. Sometimes you got like it gets you in trouble, but I got most times if like I wanted to understand. My mom always laughs at me. She's like, "Oh my God, so many whys. You asked me so many why. I didn't know what to say." And so for me, it's like I always had this search, but I'm like, there's gotta be a way.
mm,
There's gotta be a way. I did everything right growing up. I follow all the rules. I did everything possible. And one day, my whole world turned upside down. I'll share more of that story. And I found myself like, wait a
mm,
minute. I was told that if I did this, this was my reward. Instead, I did it and it didn't work. So that's when I went on a quest. There's gotta be a different way. And I've had those stages in like at least 3 or 4 times in my life. From 25 to 35, I was trying to find the way because I'm like, I keep doing the right thing. I keep doing everything that everybody's telling me to do, and it's not working. Like what is it? And what I understood is that it was inside me. I
mm,
needed to learn to follow my own compass, but no one was teaching me that. Everyone was teaching me their method that led me supposedly to understand myself, but I didn't get it. I always felt like as I continued to rise, there was something that would cap me. And I'm like, no, like there's gotta be a
mm,
different way. And when I learned to connect with myself instead of just following what somebody else was telling me or whatever recipe they were giving me or what, and I'm not saying that was wrong. It just didn't work. Like there was something more for me that I wasn't owning.
mm,
And once I started to realize that it was within me, that's when I received the archetypes that I was saying the other day. And that's a method that it's not telling you you do it Paula's way because I'm teaching it. No, this is a recipe. Let's find out how it works for you. What is in for you, not through me. It's not about Paula. It's not the empowerment archetypes because Paula is giving. No. It's within you. Let's find that's a recipe. Let's find the ingredients that work for you.
mm.
And that's what lights me up because once you find that, then that's true independence. That's being connected with your truth. That's what wakes me up in the morning. It's not about following anybody's path. It's about you knowing what your path is.
Mm.
That's what I'm in for. That's what I want for women. We have immense gifts. So you're not meant to copy me or do it my way. You're meant to do it your way and contribute together. That is the feminine power.
Mhm. Wow. Mhm. That's really powerful, and it's also very counter to the modern conversation that we have as to how we interact with each other, firstly as women, but also just how we see the feminine, as not as something strong, as a force that can create and allows us to
Yes, the
tap into.
feminine.
Mhm.
Yes, that's exactly it. The feminine creates, the masculine works in service to the feminine. I'm not talking about men and women, I'm talking about energies.
Yeah. Actually, that is an important distinction for anyone listening, that when we mention like feminine, masculine energies, that varies person to person. It's not necessarily related to a gender. So men could very much be very feminine and vice versa for women. So just something to keep in mind if you're listening to this. So that's powerful. You've got me all fired up. I'm actually curious to understand, as we're going to dive deeper into like we're going to dive deeper into the bits of it, but can you give us a bird's eye view of how you got to the work that you're doing today? Like already today, you said you fell once, but just in more detail, can you give us like perhaps the pivotal moments that really helped
Yeah.
shaped and craft and got you right to finding this path, the one that you speak so highly
Yeah.
of?
So when I was born, I was the first girl born in my entire family. My parents already had a brother who was a special needs and a baby who died at birth
Mm.
2 years after. I was born 2 years after that happened. My brother died. Um, he got caught with the umbilical cord at birth and died. my my aunt had three boys, so I was the girl, and
Mm.
I was perfect.
Mm.
Being perfect when you're born, it's a lot to carry, right?
Yeah.
But of course, I was, bubbly and happy and receiving all the attention you can imagine, right?
Mm.
Um, I had a lot of fun. I really had a really rich childhood with so I didn't realize this because you don't know what you don't know as a child. You
Exactly.
don't understand, except that when we would go out with my brother, I never thought that there was anything wrong with my brother.
Mm.
When we went out, you could see the way people looked at my brother.
Mm.
There was fear, there was shame, they were scared, they didn't know. My brother was different. He didn't look different, but he was in a wheelchair, and so I started to realize that being unique and being yourself had consequences. My brother was who he was,
Interesting.
but there were
Mm.
consequences. You
Mm-hmm.
couldn't be yourself. You had to be what others would approve of you. And that's how I started to operate in my life.
Mm.
I don't make people scared like my brother did. Don't
Mm-hmm.
make people look. Do you see what I mean? Make people
Totally.
comfortable around you because my brother didn't.
Yes.
So that's when I became the good girl, doing
Yeah.
everything right, checking off the boxes, do for others, please others, make sure others feel good and comfortable. I wouldn't even invite my friends over. I didn't want them to feel bad. And I didn't want them to look at my brother that way because that also hurt me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then growing up, I had, of course, my teenage, my rebellious, like a normal girl, I guess. And then I met the love of my life at that time. And we got married and we did all the right things. I did check off the boxes. Again, make sure my family was proud of me. My friends were proud. I had a guy who I thought he fit the perfect model of everything that my culture was looking for. I was like, great, checked, awesome.
I got this.
I got it. I mean, my good girl was in her glory. I was like, yes, I'm doing everything right. I'm making money. I have a husband. We're buying the car. We're buying the apartment. What's next? We're going to have babies, right?
Yeah,
Doing
of
the
course.
right thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. I did want it. a part of me did. And then the universe had other plans. So I remember I watched this movie, The Devil's Advocate.
Okay.
And when it came up, I saw, so he was becoming really successful and she was like trying to bring him back. It's like, no, 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 that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. This is not okay. This is, something is wrong here. And I felt like that's what was happening. So it's like that movie gave me a premonition of what was happening in my marriage that I had no idea. When I watched it, I was bawling.
Wow.
And little did I know, a month later, I went into my office and the HR person was waiting at my desk, and literally I got fired on the spot. And then later I found out that I got fired for laughing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was working at corporate, but without even notice, it's like the universe just grabbed that rug and like pulled it, and that's it. 3 months later, my ex-husband shows up and says, I don't think I love you anymore. And my marriage was over right then. Right then, he's made up his mind.
Wow.
I was
it's a
like,
powerful 4 months right there. Life-changing.
I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm doing everything right. Yeah. What do you mean? What? Like, this is a freaking cosmic joke. And I flipped. And I remember my friend took me to this spiritual retreat right there, right? Like 3 days later, a week later, or something like that. She got me on that spiritual retreat and something shifted completely. It was like it's like a 5-day retreat. And I didn't even have time to think. And that led me to go a few months later to go to India for a month. So I was like, okay, I found another job and then I quit. I left everything. I went to India. I started to following myself, not what I already did, everything that everybody else was telling me, and it didn't work. I did it to the T because I'm really good at following the rules. I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm going to listen to myself. And I started to listen, and it took me to, I started my entrepreneurial projects. I, my cookie company, and then I moved here, and then I moved there. And then my sister calls me from America. She's like, I'm so homesick. Okay, I'm going. Just pay for my plane ticket. And I'm there. Like, I started to say yes to myself. I started to say yes, 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 instead of no, no, no. I started to trust myself, and I got into different situations, but I felt like I was in charge of my life. And I learned a lot, because when you're faced with saying yes to things that you have to say yes to, it's also very risky. It's not always pretty. And it also makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I felt free. So that was the beginning of my journey. It's like I knew I needed to do something. And then I ended up in New York. I had more clarity about what I wanted. I started to work at a spa. And then someone told me about this nutrition school. My clients were asking me about what to eat for their skin and all that stuff. I love skin. I loved it. I love the body. I love learning about the body. And I just started to get fascinated. Then I found out what coaching was, and I was already doing it without even being paid. And I'm like, of course I'm going to do it. And then I opened my own place in Manhattan, and I started to do both skin and coaching. And that led me to meet one of my mentors who taught me about my business. And, I'm like, okay, I want to do this online. Yeah, I want to be free. I started to follow that freedom path. I met my husband at that place. So life would put me, when I went to nutrition school, like it put me, and the impossible became possible as long as I continue to trust myself. Now, trusting ourselves is not easy. It's one of the things that I work the most with women.
Actually, I was just going to ask about that. I was going to say, how was that journey for you? What did it look like? Where did it all really start? And what is some advice that you give women around that?
You have to be willing to lose when you say yes to yourself. And that's really hard for the good girl.
Yes. Yeah.
But the thing is that what you lose, if we really know this, if we really pass that threshold, what we lose, it wasn't ours to begin with.
Oh, wow. Could you repeat that? That is something I think
What
everyone needs
you
to hear
lose,
again. Hmm.
what you lose when you say yes to yourself is something or things or even people that weren't to be with you or yours to begin with. And a lot of what I did in my relationships is that I was always the one giving and putting the energy and keeping the energy moving and doing this and doing that. But again, people who have difficulty receiving attract people who have difficulty giving. And I felt like if I didn't show up, they didn't show up. It's like tick for tack. That's how I operated in my life and in my relationships. But it
Hmm.
didn't feel good because I felt it had to do with my worthiness. It felt like if I didn't do it, I didn't deserve it. And that's what I needed to shift. These are concepts, I'm throwing them like this. It's
No,
so
yeah.
difficult to really, like, not difficult. You have to know how, and you have to go through a journey to really own these concepts within you, because all the programming goes against it, from church to culture to anything. It goes against that. You got to sacrifice, you have to do for others. If not, you're a bad wife, a bad sister, a bad daughter, a bad this, a bad that. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be a bad person. I wanted to be good. Oh, so being me is bad. That didn't
Yeah.
resonate. What are we talking about? But no one taught me how to know myself. They taught me how to be there for others, but I didn't never learned how to be for myself, how to be myself and know that it was okay. Because the moment I was being true to myself, someone would get offended. So then you get the memo that being you, it's not okay. Just like my brother.
Mm. Wow. Hmm. Well, there's a lot to digest there. It's really powerful when you said that when we start to change and we start to see our worth and we start to live and really ground ourselves in those principles that you're talking about, we lose what was not ours. And so what were some of the things or the first things that you started noticing in the people around you and and how your experiences started to change when you started to implement these or really feel ownership of what you're of that trust and that worthiness?
Yeah. So what I want to say is you lose what it wasn't yours to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you also gain so much more that is aligned with you, which is effortless instead of you having to work for it. Because the things that you lose are the things that you've been really working so hard for. And now, when you're aligned with yourself, you receive and you gain and you keep the things that are really easy in your life, including people. And here's the thing, the way I teach women in my work is when you're true to yourself and know how to express yourself and to communicate in a respectful and loving way to yourself first, it's funny because you invite others to show up for themselves. Because mostly when we are operating from a place of doing for others and sacrifice, what you create is codependent relationships.
Mm.
Are
The
not
healing,
healthy.
I'll heal you, I'll fix you, like that feeling of having to
Yeah,
do the work for
I'm
somebody
there for
else.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do the work for somebody else. And it doesn't work because someone needs to be willing to do the work in order to receive it.
Mm. And it's beautiful that you're saying that, because there's so much of our identity that sometimes that is tied to that sense of that form of giving, where it's like that you essentially, that it's hard to detach, because then you realize you're like, well, who am I if I don't get that form of love, or if I don't give that, if in that way.
And that's the quest. Who you are, that's our job to find out. Nobody else's job to find out. It's my own responsibility to have to know who I am and what I want and what makes me happy and what are my needs. That's my job. When we put that on somebody else, it's already like, how is it gonna work? How are others
Mm.
gonna know better? That's why when I use the archetypes in my work is to help you connect with yourself. It's very hard when you lived your life. I have women that are even in their 60s working with me.
Yeah, I could
Imagine
imagine.
living years of your life the opposite. So it takes a little bit, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see a woman smiling because she knows herself, it's like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, it's the best feeling when we know what we are and we don't depend on anyone to tell us. Even if you're strong, a lot of us still look for approval.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you become your own source, because you are connected with source, it's magic.
Mm-hmm.
And then you invite others to do the same. So through your work, you inspire others. And that's what happened in all of my relationships. I lost things that didn't really agree with me, but the relationships that I already had, and I was just in Argentina with my friends for years. I have friends for 40 something years. They're still in my life and even more closer. And now we connect from this place because they know what I do. It's like, oh my gosh, let's do, yeah, I want to talk. And so we connect from a different place. And
Yeah.
sometimes it happened in my own life that people in my life disappear for a while while I was doing my journey, and then we met at a different stage. It happens too.
And it's beautiful as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. So whatever it's not in your life, just trust that it's a gift, that it wasn't meant for it. You know, even
Yeah.
my ex-husband, right? Like whatever, like it's okay. I am
Mm.
so grateful to my former husband. I'm so grateful. He gave me the best gift ever, and because he gave me the opportunity to look for myself. If
Mm.
I were still married to him, things would have been very different. And I wouldn't change anything, even though it was the most painful experience, one of the most painful experiences I've ever had.
That's powerful because I always love to ask, after sometimes when we think about the journey that we've gone through, we're always like, well, if I knew it was going to be like that, maybe I wouldn't have done it. So the naive, being naive about it is beautiful, but and that's also the journey. So it's beautiful when I hear you say that you would 100% go back, repeat everything because it's guided you to where you are today.
Yeah, I will repeat it. And now that I know better, I would accelerate the process for sure. So I would maybe like accelerate the crappy parts, and do the better.
let go easier. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious because a lot of women, we reach certain ages, or everybody has some kind of mental block and some kind of limit that they reach in life where they feel like where they come from determines where they will go. And I've
Mm,
seen this many times, usually with older ladies, but even young, it's like not always related to age. But I'm curious because I know when we've chatted in more detail, like you went from working corporate and then being in Miami. I think you worked at a bakery and then you became a coach. Then you were like a six-figure entrepreneur or plus. And then now you're like really a transformational coach. You're more connected to your mission than ever. And so you literally you've dabbled in everything and have finally found yourself. So give us some advice and tell us a little bit about what it took, um, that whole transition, that whole evolution.
Well, you can't do it on your own, right? I had people that believed in me. I had
Mm,
mentors that believed in me, that knew that it was possible. And I understood that I had to break a lot of patterns in order to be where I am.
mm,
I remember a time when I was building my business and my father, he lost his business. I grew up with him, seeing him in his business, and I learned a lot of what I know about business. I learned it from him. So I looked up for him. And also in Argentina, for example, women, like very rarely women have businesses. Like it wasn't a woman's job to have a business. She was the assistant, she was the
mm-hmm,
secretary, but she wasn't the owner of a business.
mm-hmm,
But I always knew that I wanted to be working out of the house. So, raising children and being a homemaker wasn't my end goal. I had my grandma who was that, and she loved it, and I learned all the skills. I learned everything from her. Like I say, my nose was always everywhere. And so I learned, I know how to be an excellent homemaker. Probably I'll be an amazing mother as well. I'm not. Um, and so it's like, okay, like I know how to do this, but it doesn't feel like my truth. I wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to be in the go. I wanted to create things, and that felt fun for me. But my dad lost his business. He went bankrupt
Mm.
at some point, in my 20s. And so I remember when I was building my business, I got to a level of success, and I'm like, that visceral fear
Mm.
that I could lose it like my dad, or that I was to become more than my dad, is that
Mm.
loyalty thing. So I
Yeah.
had to work through that. And those are the things that I also help my clients. They're so sneaky and you don't even realize. So I would self-sabotage constantly in my business. Like I wouldn't call people that wanted to work with me. And my husband was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
Mm.
What do you mean?" And I didn't realize that I was self-sabotaging because of that loyalty that I had with my dad. Like I couldn't allow myself to be more than my dad. Like it felt disrespectful, and I wanted to honor my father. So right. So do you see how like
Mm.
so many things, so many times we do that, and we get stuck. So we have to be so mindful and so connected to know, to follow your truth, again, your inner yes, and to know what feels true to you. And okay, so allow yourself to receive the help to get there. Because again, I didn't do it on my own. I have people and mentors that believed in me, and I looked up to people who were doing close to what I wanted.
Mm.
So I could model and I could understand what was required of me to get there.
Mm. Mm-hmm. You had good examples on the way. Mm-hmm. You brought up
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
super powerful
You
there with the
your own
patterns. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Sorry. Say that
No,
again?
no, I thought you brought up something really incredibly powerful, and I hope everybody kind of really sits with that thought of like the patterns and that loyalty that sometimes can happen with family, or even just
Yeah.
loved ones, people that we really care about. So, I'm now that you brought up patterns, actually, I'm really curious to dive into what's a pattern or belief or something that you've had to really rebirth, really let go in your life that maybe cost you the most in the sense of like you were really attached to it.
Well, for me, it was, one of the biggest things, patterns in reality are like I couldn't do it on my own as a woman.
Mm.
So again, I had to do it on my own from the masculine, because men could do it on their own. And I knew
Mm.
I've always been very ambitious. So I wanted things, but I had to learn that receiving help wasn't weak. It didn't make me weak. Also, because one of my biggest fears was to end up alone. And that's why I overcompensated and I did and pleasing and all that stuff that I did, because I didn't want to feel alone. And at some point, I started to build my business and, having incredible success. And, it's like my relationship sucked with my husband. Like we were almost getting divorced. It was like a mess. I was in like bitch mode constantly. I was completely exhausted, overwhelmed, so much pressure on myself. I didn't know, like, I was making decisions and I was kind of, like, I was following what I was supposed to do, but it wasn't really connecting with me. But I thought that that's what I needed to do, right? Like I was trapped there, and it caused me a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration within myself, with others. I had people who wouldn't do the things that I want them to do. But then I realized that I wasn't communicating. I didn't know how to
Mhm.
communicate in a loving way. I didn't know how, like, I expected people to read my mind, things that happen when you're in the path of growth. But I did it. And then, I was reaching this level of success, but I looked around and I was like, crickets, who is with me? I felt so alone. And I'm like,
Mm.
what is the point? Why am I doing this? This is not what I wanted. So then I
Wow.
realized that it's because I did everything alone my whole life. That's one of the biggest things. It's okay. Like I can do, I can receive help. I can be with others. So much depended on me when I was little
Mm.
because my parents both worked out of the house. So we had my brother with special needs. We had help in the house, but then I was in charge when they left. And then I had to set the table, like make sure everything was ready. My sister did her homework. I was in charge. I was the older sister.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot.
So then I fulfill that role. And I feel like a lot of strong women, they, whether you are an older sister or not, somehow in your story, you had to take on a lot of responsibilities more than a girl should have had to at the time. And I carried a lot of the emotional weight of my family, my parents with, having had already my brother and then a child that died. They didn't have time to process, they were in survival. So all of that unprocessed emotions, guess
Yes.
who took them on? Me. And a lot of people don't even realize, especially women don't realize how much that weighs on us growing up, and how much then it doesn't allow us to connect with emotions in the way we should, because it doesn't feel safe. And that's when the feminine doesn't feel safe. Connecting with emotions doesn't feel safe. So then we go into go, 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 and masculine.
Mm. Hmm. So, what's one thing that you do for yourself to continue to shine that feminine power and to keep you grounded and to keep you really, like you always say, from the head down?
Well, first of all, the first thing that I do is to get clear, to always know and get clear and sit down if I don't have the clarity to know what's true to me.
Mm.
What feels true to me, not what others expect of me, or what, whatever would look pretty on paper. No, 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 no. What is my truth in any situation? From, like now we've been redecorating my house, like redecorating. And then, when you have another person like my husband, then you create an agreement. But first you need to have clarity on what you want and what is true to you. So that's the first thing.
Mm.
And for you to create that, I have rituals where I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is to connect with myself. I set an
Hmm.
intention for my day. I have my hot water with lemon. I take care of me. I create spaces for me. And I tell you, I coach women who have 5 kids. So it's a matter of creating a way to do it, to
Yeah.
find a time for yourself. First thing is the best, because you start your day saying to the universe, I matter, I deserve it, I'm worthy. And then
Mm.
end the day with yourself, reflecting on your day. I do this every day and every night. Be,
Oh, that's
like, right.
beautiful.
Yeah, writing 5 things that you're grateful for. It keeps you in the energy. The other
Hmm.
thing that I do is truly own the right to have needs, because we learn not to have needs because needs
Mm.
were bothered for somebody else. When you are in survival and when others are so busy around you, you get the memo. My needs are not important, so I'm just gonna, I'm gonna do for others. And so then we deny our own needs. That was huge for me, to really give myself permission and say, I have needs. It's okay to have needs, and really own that right. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, yes. Totally
And the,
know.
the and so another thing that I do is, whenever, I learned this, I learned to master my communication skills. I was horrible at communicating.
Mhm.
Horrible. Like always expecting people to get it. I
Yeah.
wasn't expressing myself and then getting frustrated at them because they didn't
Yes.
get
Sorry, it's
like,
an
what's wrong
awfully
with you?
it's way too familiar, I could say. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I totally
Yeah, it's like,
understand.
what, dude, you can't read my mind. Like, what's wrong with you? And it's just, I knew that at some point I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I need to learn how to communicate in love. I was too direct. When you're masculine, you're too direct. Well, let's
Mm.
bring a little bit of the gentle, softer energy into it. Bring the heart, bring the love, bring the compassion, being self-compassionate and self-forgiving. Huge
Yes.
game changer. Because as the perfect one, I had to be perfect.
Yes.
So learning to be compassionate and learning how to speak my needs, how to ask for what I want. Asking again, another huge thing. If I ask, I'm selfish, I'm greedy. No, like we have to ask. It makes me weak.
Yes. And actually that's one of the biggest things is like that asking or feeling like if you ask for what it is that you want or even asking for help, whatever it might be, that feeling of being weak. Like for sometimes I'm like, where the hell did that even come from? Like,
From the concepts of the feminine, a woman, that's what we learned about the feminine. The feminine is weak.
yeah,
Toughen up. Too
yeah.
sensitive.
You can do it. Yeah, it's
Emotions
so
are
true.
bad.
Yeah.
Emotions are bad. You know, they control you. You become a crazy woman. Relax. Relax.
Oh, that one's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right? When they say relax. What?
Sorry, say
Uh,
that again. Oh my goodness. There's
yeah.
so many there. Sorry.
Mastering our
Mm,
emotions is huge because I was never going to allow anyone to tell me I'm crazy ever
yeah.
again. I knew at some point, I'm like, no, I'm going to master this. I'm going to master my emotions. And that requires that you get to know yourself so deeply.
Mm,
Again, this is the work that I walk women through. Get to know yourself so deeply. And I become a mirror.
mm. Oof, I can imagine those conversations. Mm-hmm.
Powerful, powerful. But when you
Yes.
really see yourself and when you're really seen and heard in a place, a sacred space and love, that's the transformation. It's not that hard. But most of us, carry a lot of shame, a lot of guilt.
Yes.
But
Do
we
you
need,
still feel some of this sometimes? Do you like have you just gotten better at working through these emotions?
yes,
Is
of
it
course.
do they come less often? Like what does that look like for you today now that you have more mastery?
Yeah, I don't feel guilty almost as much as, whenever I say something, I always know that I can repair it. I know how to if I have to. Um, because I'm so connected with myself, usually I'm very conscious of my language. And again, I slip because I'm human, and when that happens, I know how to make up for it, how to repair if I
Mm,
said something that didn't feel true or that hurt somebody. um but yeah, I mean, before I was constantly like editing myself, and
mhm,
now I feel more free to speak. When I speak on my platforms, sometimes I rehearse things because it's just, I feel more confident that way. So I give myself what I need in order to feel confident, in order to feel secure about the things that I say. It's not like I rehearse because I become a robot. It's because, we need to exercise
mhm,
our right to speak our truth. And no one really taught us, and we don't have enough opportunities in our daily life. That's why when I have people in my programs, women, we create a space where we can feel free to speak up because we need to rehearse that. That's what I mean by it. We need to
totally.
speak it, we need to say it, because in our daily life, we don't have those opportunities.
Mm,
Does
mhm.
that make sense?
100%. Yes. We
Yes.
either don't give it to ourselves or there's just not or their time or our partner or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And actually I wanted to ask, what did you dream of becoming as a little girl? Like does it have anything to do with what you're doing now?
Not really. I mean, no. I would say what I wanted to do is, like, my mom, she worked at embassies and she had really high level jobs. So I wanted to be out of the house. My mom was an assistant and a secretary for high, CEOs and ambassadors and stuff. So I wanted that. Like, she had job, and she got dressed up and, makeup on and suit and the whole thing. And she took me to all the functions that they did at the embassy, and I would, protocol things. And I was like, oh, this is so jazzy. Like I love,
That's awesome.
I loved, like, those meetings. And then I also loved, my dad had a lingerie store, and he ran his own business. So I would go after school and learn about, we would close the day. He would do the check and
Mm.
balances, and he would teach me. I would see how he welcomed people into the shop, and, train his employees. And we did the inventory, and we, all that stuff. And I would have my nose everywhere. So I knew that I wanted to do something. But of course, in my culture, women didn't do,
Mm.
like, they weren't supposed to be the owners. So I knew that at some point, and this was it, when I got fired for laughing, I was like, this is it.
Mm.
And this is what also I feel like it triggered my marriage, because I was like, hell no. And I started my first business rather than, I got published in a magazine, in a national magazine, promoting my business. But of course, when you're an entrepreneur, so I had that gene,
Yes.
the ambitious entrepreneur gene. And I knew that I wanted to create, I wanted to do something, and I wanted to be my own boss, because I'm better at being a boss.
I like to, yeah, that's awesome. And actually, because ever since I've met you, you have a really strong connection to your voice. You express yourself with so much freedom. And we actually largely talked about like learning to communicate, bringing the feminine with love. And so it's not just like so direct. And so, but I find you're so connected to your voice, and in the sense of there's a certain power to it. And so for women looking to understand how to gain that, or how to go on that journey with finding their own voice, and maybe this relates to a little bit the wild woman, some of the archetype work that you do, I'd love to
Yes.
see what you'd recommend, because your voice just has so much passion. It conveys so much strength and so much trust. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to understand that a little
Well,
bit more.
it's a journey. I mean, come, let's talk. Let's have a talk, and let's see what would be best for you. I could recommend something, but I mean, my programs, that's what they do.
Hmm.
This is it. I teach what I learned. I don't
Yes.
teach anything that I didn't learn. And mastering myself and the way I communicate and the way I connect with myself first and then express it was huge for me. I remember, so when I was born, my country was under military coup.
Oof.
So repression was one of the first things that I felt growing up. You couldn't
Yeah.
say what you wanted because you were going to get killed. Like that
Wow.
was it.
Hmm.
And then we had democracy, and then whatever, But I remember this first time I was in this coaching program. I was developing my business, and I wrote something that felt really true to me. And I wrote it on my Facebook, right? Like my Facebook page. I wrote it out, a post on Facebook, just really expressing myself and expressing something very vulnerable.
Mm.
And no kidding, like this is how deep and why we need to do this deep work.
Hmm.
Because like I said about my father, right? Like when I felt that loyalty, if we don't catch that, that will continue to happen.
Yeah.
So I remember I wrote that post, again, very vulnerable, and I was about to hit send, post
Yes.
on Facebook.
Hmm.
And I had this visceral fear paralyze me completely. And I felt, no joke, I felt that they were going to come get me and kill me for what I was about to post. It was so visceral, I can't explain it,
Wow.
but it brought back that fear of don't speak up. I mean, the wild women in the past who have spoken were killed or burnt at the stake. So we, in our genetic code, women carry that. It's
Mm.
deep. It's not just like, oh, learn a technique and do it. It runs really deep. That's why I'm so passionate about my work,
Yes.
because you have to look at that stuff. It
Mm.
comes from generations and generations. And I'm not trying to make it dramatic, but this is really true.
Yeah, no,
So
and mhm.
yeah, yeah.
No, and this is powerful. You bring that up, and it's kind of leads me to the question of like who growing up, since you did grow up in this environment, and I gather you've told us a little bit about your mom and your grandmother as like role models, who have also been like big mentors in life, and maybe you can expand on some of the influences you had from those role models that you did grow up with.
Well, Argentinian women are pretty feisty. My mom was one of them. So, but when you speak your truth from a place of anger is not the same as when you speak your truth from a place of alignment. When
Mm,
you're speaking your truth. My mom, a lot of it, like my mom and a lot of us, when we start speaking our truth and because of we're just like
yes.
saying it because I'm gonna do it. We're doing it from a place where it can be received because that energy of anger repels.
Mm, mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
and also we're doing it from a proving energy place,
Yeah.
which means that you're proving that you're right. When you don't need to prove, and you can communicate your truth from a place of because you know it, and there's no proving energy. So the way that carries in the communication. And once you communicate that from that place, you are heard. I am a firm believer, and I was so the opposite. My mom screamed a lot. I screamed a lot to be heard. Our power as women is to know that we don't have to scream in order to be heard. And how do we not scream is by being so deeply connected with ourselves and with our feminine power.
Mm. Wow.
From a lot of my mentors, I learned a lot of the amazing things, but I also realized that there was a point where this was not happening. Like I felt that there was that fight to be
Yes.
successful, to prove, very underlying. And having brought up grown up, sorry, by next to my brother, I learned a lot about how to tap into the energies because that was the only way I could communicate with my brother. My brother didn't speak, my brother
Mm,
didn't walk. My
mhm.
brother had to be changed and fed for life. He lived 50 years. He passed
Wow.
away last year. The
Oh,
only
what a
way,
soul.
yeah, the pure soul. I feel so blessed because I grew up next to the purest soul I've ever met.
Mm, mhm.
And he taught me in his beingness how to connect with energy. So when I was learning from a lot of women who I love and I'm so grateful for, I also learned what not to do because I realized that at some point there was a cap.
Yeah.
And that proving energy was still there, even though they were super successful.
Yeah.
There was a cap on that. You have to be a certain way and you have to prove. And I knew that it wasn't the way that truly resonated with me. And that's when I went on a quest to find how can we be, because it's not about being silent, it's about honoring and trusting ourselves and knowing how to communicate in an eloquent way.
Mm,
But it's more about the energy than the words, if that makes sense.
mhm.
And that alignment is what I'm so passionate about teaching women.
Mhm. And it's interesting because you could probably say the same thing with two different like inner states, and it's like you said, two completely different things. So it's probably that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I actually yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of want to take it back to a little bit of that feminine energy that we talked about earlier in our conversation, and how, I think, and our role models. So a little blend of both. So we haven't necessarily had the most empowering female role models out there. And granted, history has its fair share of reasons why. But I'm curious for women to really understand what it feels like to feel safe in their feminine.
Hmm.
Yeah, can you guide us a little bit through what that feels like, what that is like, what life is like
I
there?
feel like one of the qualities of the feminine that I feel like I'm very passionate about to bring it in my work is the word grace.
Mm,
And I feel women have forgotten what grace looks like because, again, we've been fighting our way through life. And it all comes back to alignment and releasing the need to prove. When a woman really owns who she is and releases the need to prove who she is, to fight against something, but being so true to yourself, which you gain it by knowing yourself and by owning who you are, it's not really that difficult. But
mm,
when you stop the proving and you live present with presence, that energy speaks for itself. You don't have to overdo it. People
yeah.
feel you. People feel, we humans feel all the time. We might not understand it. But when you open your heart instead of being in your head, when you come back to your heart, which is the feminine space,
Mm-hmm.
and you operate from here, feeling safe, feeling open,
Yeah.
not feeling like you have to guard it, that's when doors open with ease, effortless. And that's when we can allow ourselves, because again, we don't have to fight, we don't have to protect ourselves.
Mm,
And then we can have a direct access between our mind and our heart. And that's the key, isn't it? Feminine,
yeah.
masculine, feminine. Like, and we operate from that place. It's beautiful. It's not
Wow.
rocket science, but because we've been programmed for generations the opposite, we just need to do the work and allow it to take as long as it takes and be patient and be kind to ourselves, self-forgiven,
Oh
right?
my gosh, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
funny, it's fascinating how sometimes the hardest thing is just to accept who we are.
Yes.
I,
But
I it fascinates me. Hmm.
yeah, because we've learned to be not who we are in order to be accepted and loved, which is what all of us humans crave, to belong, to be loved, and to be accepted.
Wow. Yeah. It's so true. It's really, really, it's really interesting how that has played a role in like all of our lives as young women, and
Yeah.
including us as older. So I one of the questions, because you have, like we just mentioned, we alluded that your path has always been wandering, and like you've been into so many different things. So I'd love to highlight a little bit about the moment where you received the archetypes, and
Mm.
with the intention of really highlighting what was your guiding light in that moment in your life, because a lot of us want to know exactly where we're going before we even start a journey. And so I find that that's such a powerful example of like heading in a direction not knowing, and then sometimes life just has a download for you or something so beautiful. So I'd love to use that example with this. Yeah.
So I don't think I've ever mentioned this story, but in this way, and now it's just coming to me. So it's perhaps this is the perfect time to do it. Uh, so I remember I was in at a point in my business where I was, again, I was making really good money. I was working and doing amazing things. I just launched the power of receiving, but of course I'm super stubborn. On top of that, I'm a Capricorn. So anyone who knows about astrology knows that Capricorns have horns and they're super hard-headed. On top of that, I also have Sicilian genes, so that makes it even like headstrong. Like, I mean, if you would say something, I have everything against me, but I also have everything for me because I never give up.
Yes.
And I'm so resilient,
Mm-hmm.
and so I learned to use that stubbornness towards my benefit instead of stopping me, which is what it did many times before. And I just launched the power of receiving, one of my programs. I launched it and I was riding the wave. I was teaching the principles. I was also practicing the principles in my own life, but I was stubborn. And I knew that, okay, so now I'm, at the top of what it felt my top. And I was like, oh my God. But then I felt alone, right? Like I was describing, my relationship with my husband wasn't working. I feel like completely not supported by people around me. I hire people and they constantly disappoint me. I was like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And why is it so? It's like I felt like I had to be the motor of everything. Otherwise, things would just go to hell. It's just like, this is not working. Blah, blah, blah. There's got to be a different way. Like, again, I was doing everything right. I was following what my coach was telling me to do at that moment and how to build the business and what structures to have, but it wasn't working. I mean, it was working because I was receiving the result financial wise, but emotionally and like it took a lot of me. Like my body was breaking down. I was living in LA and I had allergies like never before. I mean, it was like, what is going on? I couldn't sleep at night. I was sleeping like 3-4 hours intermittent. I would wake up in the morning like being, I couldn't close my eyes after that. So that's when my husband was like, okay, let's go. Like let's go.
I gotta
let's
take
go
this one out of town. Yeah.
Like something needs to happen because this is like, it's not sustainable. And he knew it. Like I was a mess. I was screaming left and right. Like anything ticked me off immediately. I was like a mess. I would say my bitch archetype was like on, fully on. And it's not a fun place to be because I didn't feel good about myself. Like, I didn't like myself even, like there's times in your life that you're like, no, this sucks. So of course I was going to figure it out. Right? I'm going to figure it out. I brought 5 books with me. I gotta find it. It's gotta happen.
Yeah.
So we go to Maine and he rented a cabin in front of a lake, gorgeous. The tide would go in and out. We had a fire pit. It was actually pretty chilly. So it wasn't a typical summer. So I was like, whatever. And I remember I had these gorgeous, the beach chairs. I was looking at the ocean. I opened the first book, the first day, to start my journey. I'm like, okay, now that I have free time, I'm going to focus on this. I opened the book, must have read like 3 pages, and I passed out. Fell asleep. I couldn't open another book. Like literally I would open it and then I couldn't read. You know when you read but you're not reading because it's not coming in. There was no more room. So I needed to create space. I slept. So finally I surrender, which is a word that for strong and powerful women, it's really hard. I surrendered to the moment. I didn't want to waste any opportunity. I have days off. So now I have to figure it out because then if not, I have to work and I have to keep everything on. You see what I'm talking about? Like the craziness. Yeah. So now I was like, okay, I can't do this. Yeah. And for me to say I can't do this was the most painful thing to say, that I can't do it. But I slept 14 hours each day for the next 10 days. Horrible company for my husband. But with this, right? Like I was like a baby, wake up, go to the bathroom, eat,
sleep, repeat. Yeah.
Yeah, sleep, repeat it all over again. So horrible date. Thank goodness my husband loves me. And and the next day we went back home. Now we had a home in New York and a home in LA. We went back to New York at that point and then back to LA. That first night in New York, I woke up at 3 a.m. after sleeping, after being fully rested. Like I didn't even realize how much sleep I needed. Woke up at 3 a.m. and I got the whole download of the archetypes, the whole system. Like I couldn't put my pen down. When you feel that someone's dictating and you're just writing, you're taking notes. I was just taking notes. I felt like there was a professor up there who was like telling me what I needed to write. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote until probably noon.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, this is fucking genius. Oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, I can't even believe it. Oh my God. And I kept doing that. And my husband was sleeping and he's like, what's going on? Are you okay? Shh. I was like, shh, I'm writing. Literally. And so then I started to make sense of it. And it's what I teach today. It's brilliant.
Wow.
So as you can see, I mentioned a few things. Surrender,
Hmm.
which is not the same as quitting.
Totally. Mm-hmm. It's a
And
big difference.
that's a feminine, and you have to know when to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know when to take action.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're connected with that inner compass, you know.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing for everybody else, you won't know. But when you're connected with yourself, you will.
Wow. That is, I always love that story because it's just such a perfect example of the fact that we are always being guided when we're truth, when we stick to our, when we stay with our truth. So, yeah.
But what I was doing at that time, I was teaching the power of receiving program. I was teaching and I was also reincorporating this principle. So I was doing the principles, and this was the result of the principles that I was already teaching. And then I created another program for the Wow Woman, but that's a different story. Does that make sense? So I was already
100%.
I was walking my talk, and it worked.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's so powerful. That's I love that story. So thank you for sharing that. That's and actually I wanted to ask you about this because I know you've developed a lot of self-compassion and you're just you're so connected with yourself. So when something doesn't work out as you wanted or have planned it, like what's the first thing you say to yourself, you do with yourself?
Well, I still
Who's
get
that you
pissed.
be yeah?
Okay. I'm human. I still get pissed when things don't get my way, because I like when things go my way. I'm only human. But then I realized one of the things that I learned to build this trust with the universe is that I know, and this was the first time that things really didn't work out for me, was when my past marriage, my former husband walked out. So that was the thing, like, wait a minute, I did everything right. What do you mean it's not working? Blah. So I learned that, as I said, it was one of the biggest gifts. So I realized that when things don't go my way, instead of keep pushing, I get frustrated and I get pissed, upset. Because if they're watching in the UK, it's not that I get drunk, but I get upset.
That's awesome.
um, I don't go out drinking, but I get upset. Then, then I'm like, there's got to be a reason. I'm sure there's a gift, and I surrender to it. I accept it because I know that when things are for me, they work easy. So if something is hard and it's not working, it means that it wasn't for me. And now I have that agreement with myself that I fully believe that. Not just I'm saying it, but I fully embody it. I know it because I had enough evidence. So sometimes when you're starting with this, you have to build the
Yes.
evidence. So then your good girl knows that it's safe to let go. Because our good girl archetype would want always push, like I did when I was showing the example. She's gonna want to figure it out. She's gonna want to do it. She's gonna find the research. She's gonna like go bananas about it instead to release it.
Mm. I love
But it's
that.
an exercise. It's an exercise.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out naturally. Yeah.
No, it's powerful. It's true because it's like that surrender keeps coming up, and I think it's an important word that we all need to keep to heart and be gentle with ourselves and right and be like, where's the gift in this? It's very, very true. So
Yeah.
one of my favorite words to talk about is success, because it's tossed around so easily. It's a very confused term. So I always like to ask, do you feel successful? How do you define success? What's been your journey with success? How do you look at success? Like, can you take us into that world for us and
Yes.
what that really means for you?
Yeah. So I had my relationship with success continues to evolve. Um, Growing up in a culture of scarcity mentality, nothing is ever enough. That's what we learned. You're not good enough. Nothing is ever enough. No matter what you do, there's always going to be more. And there's a certain truth that applies to the meaning of life and the journey of the soul, because we are here to be more. We're constantly going to be seeking for more. When you plant a seed on the ground, it multiplies. That's what it's meant for. That's what we're here for. However, the way we've been going about, and we learned through years and years and years of being in a system that it was created that way through scarcity, is that no matter what you do, nothing will ever be enough. And you have to have more to be more instead of be more to have more. It's the opposite.
Wow.
So for me personally, I followed the route. Like I was saying, I was there. I was at the top of my top at the time. It doesn't matter. Right. But for me, it felt like the top. Like I was doing it. I was creating it. It was happening. And of course, there's next levels. And that's the beauty of it. But I was there, and I didn't like myself. It didn't feel good to me, because I was following, just like I was living a life that wasn't mine by checking the boxes and like the kid, the house, the car, the marriage, the this. I was also doing the same thing with success. And I wasn't even asking myself what it truly meant success for me. I was following other people's ideas of success, which then put a lot of pressure on myself, but I never really questioned it. I never really sat with myself and said, wait a minute, how does this really truly feel to you? Is this really true to you? So when I got there doing what everybody else was saying that I needed to do, and it didn't feel true to me, then I said, then that's when I figured out, I'm like, well, but wait a minute. So what does it mean to be success? And again, for you, when you're surrounded by people who believe in certain things, you to be different, it's not okay. Just like with my brother, right? Like my brother was different, and that made him not okay.
Totally. Wow.
For many people. So then that was also something that I needed to heal within myself, and to be okay with being different. Now it's a little bit more, and we're in the constant quest of everything, color of your skin, ideas, like, we feel like we're in such a turmoil right now on like, well, claim who you are and own who you are. And we are not meant all to be the same. But we grew up in cultures where we were supposed to be the same as everybody else. So again, so now we're breaking. So this applies to success in the sense of like, what does it mean, success to you? For me, success means being true to myself and feeling the freedom to do what I feel is true to me in every area of my life. The fun thing about this is all the things that I always wanted, I have them with ease and with joy instead of working my ass off like before. Now they come because I'm aligned and because I'm clear. Remember, I was saying that at the beginning. When you're aligned and when you're clear, things come to you. Well, that's what you do. So redefine success. What is success for you? What does it look like? But don't just look at the money or the amount of clients that you have or the amount of like whatever title you have. No, look at what is true to you in all areas of your life, because a lot of successful people, they have horrible marriages, they have no social life like I did. So on paper and on Facebook, it looked like I had it all perfect.
Yeah.
And then I was battling with the inner struggle that my marriage was falling apart, that I had no time for my friends and I felt alone, that I couldn't even, like, my family was a mess. And so I was carrying that shame, that closet, skeletons in the closet. And I had to keep that pretty image. No, I'm great. Everything is great. You see what I mean? That didn't feel true to me. It felt so inauthentic. So that's why I was like, whoa. Wait a minute. And I got really clear about what I wanted.
Because I guess I wouldn't say the worst, and this is probably passing judgment, but I guess it would be a very empty feeling to reach and, like you said, take all the boxes of what success is supposed to mean and then still feel so empty.
But many people people do. That's the thing. They might not admit it because they're in their ego and not in their heart, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have full success, like they feel super successful, and they are in every area of their lives. To me, success is all encompassing, it's not compartmentalized.
Yeah.
A successful person means that you are connected with all areas of your life and you feel good about who you are in all areas of your life and what you
Yeah.
have and what you can achieve. And when you are aligned, then you're more creative and you're connected with your feminine, you are more creative and you have incredible ideas and you're innovating. And that's how I do everything that I do.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
like I said, and how I received the archetypes, the only way was by being in that receptive state, right? And surrender and yeah, all that good stuff.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's I always love to hear it because it's true. Staying true to ourselves is really the only form of ensuring success throughout our life. So,
Yeah.
what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Okay, two things that are amazing. First, everybody's guilty and no, it's nobody's fault. This is really good to remember when you are, for example, when it comes to relationships and also the healing, for example, right? So it takes the pressure off. It's nobody's
Mm,
fault and everybody's guilty, meaning we're not going to be perfect. We're like, we all learn it from somewhere. It's not like people are on to get you.
yeah. It's
People
actually
do
so cool.
things, they don't
Yeah.
do things to you. So, and then it also takes the pressure off yourself that you're also going to make mistakes, and
Mm.
that, you might have hurt someone, but you didn't do it on purpose because you didn't
Hmm.
know. Our job is to become conscious and not do it again, but to cut yourself some slack. Does that make sense? That really
Totally.
helped me at the beginning of my journey. And another thing is, another mentor of mine, it's awkward before it's elegant, which means that it allowed me to continue, right, to grow and to do what I needed to do without being paralyzed and waiting for things to be perfect.
Because perfection, eh? It's a big term. It's one of those saboteurs, I'd say that, or rather, it's maybe an umbrella under which we hide, right? Like something.
Or it's imposed. Like you make a mistake and people yell at you. They, like, it's like
Yeah.
nowadays you see it. People can make a mistake and you see it. They're
Oh my
like
gosh.
in
Yeah.
magazines and they're like, and then you have to hold that image. It's like I grew up my whole life like I couldn't make mistakes. Also because I had the label, like it was in my forehead when I was born.
Yes.
You're perfect. So I had that was a big thing. So I learned to embrace perfection and to become friends with perfection instead of making myself wrong all the time, because that didn't work.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. Thanks for sharing that. I really like the. It's awkward before it's elegant. It's so true.
Yeah.
So looking to the future, what's on the horizon for you? Is there something that you are looking, a vision or mission? Is there something that you have in mind? Yeah.
Well, I'm here to teach everything that I share to women. We need more women who are connected with themselves. We need more women who really know what they want and that are not afraid to ask and they can receive it with grace. We
Mm.
need women who are connected with their heart and can speak from that place instead of being angry all the time.
Mm.
I was talking to a woman in the river the other day. It was a gorgeous day, and I said to her, when a woman closes her heart, nobody wins.
Yes.
Nobody wins. We need to come from the heart. That's our gift to the world. That's our gift to ourselves. We don't like ourselves when we're angry. And I'm not saying don't get angry, but don't live from that place. Of course, I still get angry. And there are things that really fume, get my genes, as I said, my Sicilian
Yeah.
genes, my Argentine genes, like they get me going. And I'm like a Ferrari. Like I go from 0 to 1,000 in that scale. But you need to learn to not live from that place. We
Mm.
don't need more angry women. So my purpose is to teach us I want to teach women's leaders who can then trickle down these teachings, because we need to wake up in a big way.
Yeah.
The world needs us more than ever, but most of it, we need ourselves more than ever
Yeah.
right now.
That's beautiful. It's so true. We do need ourselves, but it's true. There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of heart that we can put out there. It's beautiful what you said. I really like that. Thanks. And I want to say a huge fan of your work. So obviously I will be, I'm in any way I can to spread the word. So thank you for the work that you do as
Yeah,
well.
and,
So
and
it's beautiful.
and this is it. Being
Yeah.
invited by women like you who have a platform, it's my joy. It's my this is what makes me so happy, and to really offer these programs, this work to anyone
Yeah.
who feels called, and say, if anything that you resonated with you, don't delay it. Like, this is the time. Don't try to do it on your own. It doesn't work. I
Mm.
have the formula to accelerate the process. So let's do it. Women, my
Oh, yeah.
clients, they shift within, like, even like, there's this woman who just started to work with me. Within a few weeks, she's already like, like, in her life is completely changing in ways that she's never thought possible. It's not that difficult. We make it seem like difficult because we don't know the concepts. But when you are receive the concepts, you can, ambitious women like us, they get it. We're
Yeah.
smart, we're
Hmm.
bright, like, we just need to learn how to get there.
Totally. And
So
actually, I wanted
yeah.
to mention for anybody who wants to actually listen to more information about her archetypes, there's also another interview. So where she actually dives deeper into those concepts and how the empowering feminine cycle as well. So, and the disempowering. So it's really interesting. I highly recommend you listen to that one as well. So, Paula, before I close, I wanted to ask you, what is one thing that you would encourage women to do for themselves?
To put themselves as a number one priority.
Mm.
That's it. No apology, unapologetically.
Mm.
Put yourself first. When you give to yourself, you are happy, you feel connected to yourself, you feel aligned, you love yourself, and then you have so much more to give. Because when you give, you're not giving from an empty cup, you're giving from a full cup. And then what you give doesn't have to be as much, because what you give is more than enough.
Wow. I'm gonna have to replay that one. That is wow. It's yeah. Is wow. I'm left with that. So, is there anything else that that you think I missed, or that you didn't touch on that you'd like to add? There's any parting words of wisdom I say?
I think we did amazing work.
Yeah,
No, I
we.
mean, again, I'm just gonna reiterate, women, let's do this.
Mm,
Let's do this. Let's connect with ourselves. Let's know what we want. Let's learn to communicate from a place of the heart. And that is our power. That is our power. You can be a badass from your heart. No kidding. So
mm,
this is the time. Don't waste any more time, and don't try to do it on your own. Don't try to figure it out. Allow yourself to receive the help. It doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you smarter. let's
mm.
you know let's do it. Let's do it. Find the help that you need and go for it. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Paula, so much. It's been such a great conversation. I'm so excited to share this with everybody, and I hope I know it's gonna awaken a lot of women out there, and your work consistently changes women's lives. So I'm really excited to be sharing this as well. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for your awesome questions and for keeping me on track, because you know me. So I start talking, and I really enjoy this time with you. I really trust that women receive this,
Mm.
and yeah, such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Every time I speak to Paula, I just feel so jazzed up after. So please feel free to follow her work. She's an incredible woman. If her work spoke to you, or you feel like she can help you on your path, like find her on Google. It's www.paulalacobara.com. She's a force for good in this world, and we're lucky to have her and for her to be on this journey, helping us figure life out, come to home to our power. And like she said, it's not necessarily about the fact that she's got the magic key, but she just wants us to feel what it's like to be home again, to know ourselves again, that knowing without knowing. So I really look forward to welcoming you back to another episode. Until then, please comment, share, and subscribe down below. Please let me know any ideas or subjects or people you'd like me to have on the show, and I look forward to it. Until next time.